Okay, so again, thank you very much for joining us for tonight's open information session on our Business and Human Rights course. I know that some of you that registered couldn't attend, and it's that time of the year, unfortunately, where everybody is busy with year-end reports and Christmas parties. But thank you to those of you who have come, and anybody that has registered for this session will be sent the recording afterwards. So again, welcome. My name is Jane Flanagan, and I am the recruitment manager here in Executive Education, Trinity Business School. Tonight is about exploring in more detail this Business and Human Rights Principles and Practices course that we're running in February and March of 2024. This call will be brief, and if you have any questions at all, please pop them in the chat and we'll get around to answering them, putting them to our panel towards the end of the call. So without further ado, I am joined by our faculty who are leading out on this course and who are best placed to speak about the value in running a course like this, what to expect to get out of it, who it's designed for, and at the end, I'll speak a little bit about the routes to apply. So to introduce you to our panel, we have Dr. Mary Lee Rhodes, who's an Associate Professor of Public Management at Trinity College, and she's the Programme Director for this course. Mary Lee, thank you for being with us. We are also joined by Ben Hogan, who is the Director of the Global Business Initiative on Human Rights and the Programme Lead for this course. And finally, we have Dr. Maximilian Schormauer, Assistant Professor in Business Ethics at Trinity Business School, who will also be teaching on this programme. So again, thank you to the three of you for being here. I'd like to kick us off this evening with a few questions around why this course came into being. And again, please, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat and we'll look at those as well. So Ben, I might start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about this course, who it's designed for, how it came into being initially?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jane. And hello to those of you joining us live. It's lovely to see you joining. And indeed, hello to those who are catching up on this at a later date. This course is somewhat unique. It's been designed and delivered in a partnership between Trinity Business School and the Centre for Social Innovation at the Business School and the Global Business Initiative on Human Rights, GBI, which is an organisation dedicated to peer learning and capacity building to embed respect for human rights in multinational corporations and their supply chains. And I think what that gives the course is both a theoretical underpinning and a very practical underpinning, because it's been designed with practitioners in mind, with a view really to how to implement respect for human rights within companies. The course is grounded in the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights and the OECD Guidelines for Multinational Enterprises on Responsible Business Conduct. And these two documents represent an internationally agreed and normative standard of conduct for business. And as a core component of the S in ESG, human rights are really at the cornerstone of a socially responsible approach to business. Those documents are the foundation upon which legislation is being built. So from sustainability reporting requirements, such as the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive at the European Union, to mandatory due diligence obligations and added to existing obligations such as modern slavery acts, which we see in jurisdictions such as the UK and Australia. We're seeing now mandatory due diligence becoming a feature of the landscape. We already have legislation in France and in Germany. And in fact, just today, the European institutions are in dialogue, in trialogue, to use the technical term, around a corporate sustainability due diligence directive that would apply to companies across Europe and indeed beyond European borders. So there's a really strong and practical element to this course that's designed to help people future-proof their organizations and to ensure respect for human rights is there right at the heart of how they do business. The course will introduce participants to the field of business and human rights and place it in context, and will also provide participants with an understanding of the tools necessary to embed respect for human rights in their companies or organizations. So hopefully as I say, a practical course focused on what you need to know to help your organization address these issues. And Really delighted that we'll have a range of leading academics and practitioners in this field joining us, including Professor Anita Ramasastry, who's the Professor of Law at the University of Washington and a former member of the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights, as well as Ron Popper, the CEO of the Global Business Initiative on Human Rights, a former practitioner in this field, and bringing deep understanding of the implementation challenges in practice within companies, as well as colleagues from the Centre for Social Innovation and Trinity Business School more broadly.
Fantastic, fantastic, and great to have such knowledgeable, experts leading out on the course. And I suppose, though, it will be kind of focused on doing rather than talking about it, and the practical ways that organizations can really implement these things, as you say, Ben, to future-proof their organization for these incoming regulations. Isn't that correct?
That's right, and very much the aim over the 6 weeks of the course is to have a lot of hands-on exercises and sort of practical approaches that sort of arm students with the tools to take this agenda and move it forward within their own organizations.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And thank you for going into such detail there about that. And, a lot of our courses, they're kind of focused at those people, those busy professionals that are in organizations that are tasked with ESG or tasked with this kind of EDI even, within their business, and it's like how to do that, how to implement that in a real way for long-term change. So thank you for expanding on that. Mary Lee, I might go to you next and ask you a little bit about how this course, it is the first time that we're running this course, and how it fits in, I suppose, to the ethos of Trinity Business School, why we decided to kind of, bring this under our portfolio of programs for next year.
Sure. Thanks so much, Jane, and thank you, Ben, for going into some of the details of what's in the course. Just to give a little background and context for why we do this and where we've come from. The course is based on research and engagement with practitioners about the state of human rights policies and practices in business today. It's been a core theme of the Centre for Social Innovation in the business school. We've been consulting, advising, publishing, researching in this area for about 5 years. And indeed, Ben and Max have been at the center of that throughout this process. We published the first benchmark report on business and human rights in the largest companies in Ireland in 2020. And when we did that, we were contacted afterwards by a number of firms and industry associations to provide more information to them and guidance on this topic, and more specifically, what did they need to know and what did they need to do and change in order to be better in this area. We did webinars and podcasts, sort of, ad hoc sorts of things to really help accelerate the take-up of these principles in companies. We worked with such names as the Irish Exporters Association, Mazars Ireland, and indeed the Department of Foreign Affairs. The government has quite a stake in having these principles embedded in industry, and as well as consulting with a number of individual firms. And we quickly realized that publications were great and benchmarks are great and webinars are great, but we could extend the reach of the university and our own center and accelerate the take-up of these guiding principles in business with a more structured and more easily accessed, real-time course in the form of this 8-week micro-credential that we've now launched. And so we took the time to set this up. Micro-credentials have only recently been a part of the portfolio of Trinity College and indeed the higher education area in general in Ireland. And we have a lot of experience now in micro-credentials in general. And indeed, we have a portfolio of what we call the ESG suite,
Yes.
which is a range of ways companies can be better in environmental, social, and governance practices. And this is a deep dive, as Ben described, into learning about and applying the principles of the UN guiding principles of business and human rights in the strategy and governance policies of companies. So given that it's both the first of our efforts in this area with respect to teaching, not so much with respect to research and engagement with companies, but it is also embedded in an already well-established set of courses in the area of transforming business for good, which is the strategy for the business school overall. So I might stop there, except to say one thing. Yes, I know. So I was, what's she going to say now? It is aimed at accelerating the take up of these in companies in Ireland and beyond, and to future-proof companies in terms of the regulations that are coming down the tracks and the risks that they might find in their operations and strategy. But it also is something that gives students, I think, a very current and desirable set of skills that can be taken from company to company. It is a set of tools and understandings that is quite transferable. And that, I think, is also a strength of this particular module. So now I really will stop.
Thank you, Mary Lee. No, that was excellent. Thank you for breaking that down for us so nicely. And Max, I might just call on you because you're very involved and you lead out on a couple of programs that have very much firmly looking at ESG. Maybe you'll touch upon those, and then I might ask you to go on to maybe talk about the type of individual and participant we'd like to see applying for this course, or the benefits to the organization. But firstly, maybe touch on some of the other courses that you lead out on with us here in executive education.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jane. So as Mary Lee was saying, we have several courses in executive education in the area of ESG and sustainability. So we have Creating Value with ESG, which is another micro-credential, which is now in its third year. So we have a lot of interest in that particular micro-credential because the ESG area just really has exploded over the past few years. We see a lot of interest from companies. And as Ben was saying, as part of the S, human rights has really become very, very important. And so in the ESG course, human rights are one part within a wider portfolio of issues. And so that's why we felt we need a deep dive into human rights to actually explore this in depth, given what is coming down the line also on the regulatory side. And we have the Sustainable Development for Business postgraduate certificate, which is a longer program with a commitment of around 9 months, exploring issues of sustainability a bit more broadly. And human rights figure in that program as well, but again, not as a single deep dive, but as a component among many others. So that's, I think, the core difference, that this micro-credential on human rights really provides a deep dive into the tools and practices around implementing human rights in business. And I think what Mary Lee was saying in terms of the skill set, that's exactly what sort of target group here for this course is. It is due diligence, which is one of the core components of business and human rights implementation. So doing a proper assessment of your supply chain and the associated human rights impacts, that is a task that is required on ESG more broadly. For human rights, it is the human rights topic, and that brings with it specific challenges. That's obviously what the course will talk about, but it is a broader set of skills that you are developing, which can be applied to other contexts as well. But specifically, the human rights issue, people working on sustainability, ESG, or corporate social responsibility in companies are one of the core target groups. So those that are already working on reporting on sustainability or ESG issues, and now want to learn more about the human rights aspect of it. And they might want to learn more about it because we have the European Sustainability Reporting Standards now, which are published, and they already contain human rights as a reporting item under specific circumstances. But there is also the due diligence directive coming down the line, which will certainly contain human rights due diligence as one aspect. So for those professionals already working in this space, this is about learning about this upcoming topic. And as we have seen in our benchmarking studies, many companies are still starting with it, starting to wrap their head around it, starting to understand it. So it is something that we see far less proficiency out there. And that's another reason why we wanted to have this course. but it is a broader set of people that this course targets. So it's also about people working in procurement and supply chain managers, because obviously they are on the front line picking suppliers, and their human rights issues need to be a core part in onboarding a supplier or deciding whether to work with the supplier or not in the future. Then also corporate affairs, community affairs officers can be a target group of this course, but also kind of executives, board members, people who just need to develop more skills on the different aspects of ESG, and in this case, in particular, the human rights issues. Because what we also see in the broader ESG conversation is that there is a lack of expertise on these issues on boards. And so obviously a course like this gives you a deep dive into still an emerging area where you can kind of future-proof your own skills, but also your organization, and can make sure that you know what is required and how it works to then influence the trajectory that your own company is taking. So I think these are the broad categories of people that can get the most out of engaging with the course. And with that, I might hand back to Jane.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was really valuable information, Max. And I guess just adding to that as well, one of the great things about our open enrollment programs, of which this one is, it means that any individual from any organization can sign up to. But it's a great way to network and meet people from completely different industries that are all kind of tackling the same thing, and they'll have different titles and different roles within those organizations. But, you know, learning from each other, peer-to-peer learning is always a core part of our programs as well. And again, because this is new and it's emerging, that would be a really valuable conversation to have with your peers on the course for anybody that does sign up to the course. So just to mention that as well. So I think we've kind of covered off a lot of, you know, the benefits to an organization and to individuals. If anybody does have any questions, again, I'd encourage you to come to us with them, and now is the time to answer them. In the interim, I would maybe go back to Ben and ask, what advice might you give somebody, whether they're on this call or they're watching it back later, they're thinking, should I apply to this course? Would you have any guidance for somebody like that in why they should join a course like this, Ben?
I'd certainly encourage them to join the course. I think if you're thinking about this already, you're probably exactly the sort of person we would like to see turn up and join us on this program, because I guess one of the challenges, and Max has highlighted this is one very important component of the ESG agenda, but it's perhaps one of the least understood areas, the area where there's a really very wide opportunity, I think, in some ways, for those who build skills in this field to take those forward, both within their organizations, but also, as Mary Lee highlighted, to transfer those as they progress through their careers as well. We're really standing, I guess, at the cusp of a huge sea change in terms of regulation here, and that is going to come with the need for a cohort of professionals who are skilled in conducting human rights due diligence and ESG due diligence more broadly, and can clearly understand the challenges to embedding human rights both within their firm strategy, but also within the broader operations and in terms of procurement, supply chain, DEI, as you mentioned earlier, Jane. The list of topics is broad, but I think certainly one that's worth digging deeper into, and this is perhaps the perfect avenue through which to do that. So I would encourage anyone who's thinking of applying to ask questions. We're very much here either right now or indeed over email to help answer those and make sure that the fit is right for you. But I certainly think that the sort of level that we're covering here in terms of the breadth of discussion, but also the practical focus and the case study example focus of this really means it will arm students with a ready toolkit to take this discussion forward.
And just to add the value of that as well, giving that, you know, you're going to be kind of coming in ahead of the curve with these learnings. and that this is emerging and it's of a growing importance. So I suppose adding this to your skill set for your current position, you know, in your organization, or indeed even having these skills and this know-how to bring to any new role that you might want to go to. I think, you know, there's a lot of value there because it's emerging and you'd be slightly ahead of the curve. I don't know of any other course like this available at the moment, and this is the first of its kind for Trinity Business School. I would invite any questions that people have to me. So I'm jane.flanagan@tcd.ie. I will actually put in the chat as well before we finish up the links to application. And if you bear with me a second, I'll pop those in now. And the reason I say links is there are two separate links, and I'll explain why that is in just a moment. So we have, as Mary Lee mentioned earlier, two micro-credentials, and we are one of the 5 schools, universities in Ireland that are leading out on micro-credential courses. The idea of micro-credentials is that they're short learning journeys with minor awards of 5 ECTS or university credits. With the idea that you can stack those to a major award like a postgraduate certificate in a relevant topic. But this is something that we've been doing for the last 2 years and will continue to do. And it's the whole micro-credential area is trending at the moment. It's becoming more popular. People like the idea of being able to upskill across a couple of years in a time that suits them in their busy roles, you know, short-term courses. And most of our courses here would be across 4 days in person or 6 to 8 evenings online, such as business and human rights. So that micro-credential option is there. The difference being is that when you apply that way, you sign up as a student of Trinity College. It's a slightly longer application process, but you would do an assignment at the end of the course to show your learnings, and that would be assessed. And on successful completion of that assignment, you would be awarded those 5 credits at level 9 on the National Framework of Qualifications. However, we do know that a lot of the participants that come on our executive education courses, they're busy professionals. They have, you know, they're senior leaders and so on in organizations. They don't always have the time to complete a level 9 assignment. So we therefore have the certificate of completion route, which is much more straightforward. It's a short application form. You fill it out, it comes to me, and then I advise you of the next steps to enroll you on the course. It's very straightforward. There's a slightly different price point between the two as well. But the idea is that you would do the 6 evenings in this case of learning, but you don't have to sit the assignment at the end. You just take those learnings and you implement them directly in your role. So the price point on this note as well, there's flexibility with the price of the tuition fees on the certificate of completion, and we do actually have a number of partial bursaries of 40 and in some cases 50%, which dramatically cuts the fees from $1,850 to something like $925 or $1,100. So that is available, but you will need to come to me to talk about that. I'm at jane.flanagan@tcd.ie. With the micro-credential, they're all a set price that is fixed by college, by Central College, and that's $2,000 for the micro-credential. So we'll finish up there. Again, I might ask if anybody has any questions, do ask them now. We're coming up on time. I want to thank you for your engagement. We have one from Rose Dunn. Rose, I might call on you to either come on camera or, yep, perfect. Hi, Rose, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
Good, good. Nice to see you.
I'm really sorry because I arrived late, so I thought it was at 6:30, so I feel like I'm going to be asking something that might be repetitive, so I'm very sorry about that.
That's no problem.
I just wondered, is the kind of angle, is it kind of covering a policy, kind of the law side? I know it goes into the UN Convention of Human Rights Act, something, I don't know the details, but is it kind of from that angle, or is it more on like just distribution, supply chains, and kind of like the actual business operations? Like I'm trying to just distinguish that piece.
Ben, I might put that question to you. You're coming off camera, so you're all ready. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, thanks, Jana, and hi, Rose. Thank you for the question. In terms of how we're approaching it, we're really hoping that we'll give students a strong grounding in the the legal landscape. So understanding what are the key touch points in terms of regulation and indeed international standards, such as the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. But the focus of the course is very much on the practical implementation of what those regulations and standards require from companies. So we'll be particularly focusing in on the concept of human rights due diligence, which is the process by which companies should identify and assess the risks to human rights that their operations and supply chains are responsible for, and then thinking through how to mitigate and address risks where they do arise. And we'll also focus in a little bit on what to do when things go wrong in terms of remedy for human rights harms. So really the focus there on the sort of practical implementation of the law, but we will give you a good baseline understanding of where the legislation is and where it's headed.
Okay, that's helpful. And it doesn't matter then, because I know it's kind of for people working with, like, within a business role at the moment. Like, I am more in an education space, I come from more of a sustainability lens, but I'm like, so I don't know, is it kind of like, is it kind of action plan based? Do you have to be kind of rooted in the business so you can be working through problems, or is it okay just to kind of like apply, just learn more broadly about the topic?
That's an excellent question. No, certainly it's okay to apply to learn more broadly about the topic. We welcome that. In terms of how we will look at assessment and sort of some of the exercises that we'll do in the course, for those who are coming from a organizational background, we'll encourage them to use that experience directly and sort of assess their own organizations and sort of think about how it applies to their day-to-day. But for those who are not or who are coming at this independently, the same principles are applicable to any organization. So we'd encourage you to pick another well-known company, for example, and sort of think about the processes through their operations. So we certainly welcome that. You don't have to come from a business background to participate here.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. I think that's everybody for tonight. I want to thank our panel, Mary Lee, Ben and Max. Thank you so much for joining us and for going into such great detail about the course. Learned something there myself, even though I felt like I understood the course quite well. But yeah, it's an exciting new area. It's of growing importance. I'm excited to see, how this course goes. As I say, because it's the first time we're running it, we're really eager to get your feedback, the participants' feedback, on it as well. So come to me if you're looking to see if you can get any discounts. They are available. And we hope to see some of you on the course. It starts in February 13th, I believe. So yeah, get applying now. And we're not looking for a huge cohort, but we're looking for a good cohort of people that are interested in this, are eager to learn more, and we'd be delighted to hear from you. So on that note, thank you all very much, and I will hopefully hear from you in the near future. Season's greetings to you all, and have a lovely Christmas, and speak to you again soon.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
Many
Bye-bye.
thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.